Rutgers Scarlet Knights fans, welcome to another episode of Night Watch. I am your host, Larry K. Great to be with you on another week, on this Thanksgiving week. I hope everybody is counting their blessings, those that are lucky enough to have them. We all have some. And looking forward to spending time with friends and family, and if anything, just some relaxing time over the weekend. We do have coming up this weekend Rutgers versus Maryland football game with a 3:30 kickoff. I will be at the game. I will be at the tailgate. Feel free, as always, to come talk to me, say hi, say what's up. Front row of the blue lot, always. People are always welcome to stop by and say hello. I love hearing from people. Look, it's been I guess you could say a good week for the basketball team as they've turned things around. Currently sitting there with one loss. And after that Princeton, what we all saw as a debacle in Trenton for a few reasons, the basketball team has rebounded fairly well. The football team goes down to Penn State 27-6, a 21-point loss against the Nittany Lions, which, I'm going to touch on the football team first and the program. I think there's a lot going on from a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different people weighing in, and I think we'll have much more in the way of, a full picture of this season once the Maryland game is over, but even more so once we get through the bowl game and we see how we play in both of those final games. Right now we're sitting at 6 wins, 6-5. And I think it's important to understand that, you can go back and look at my season prediction video where I predicted game by game. I didn't predict scores, but I predicted Rutgers' record this year, and I predicted wins and losses as to each game. Up to this point, my prediction video is 100%, i.e., I predicted that we would be 6-5 this week, and I predicted the exact wins and the exact losses that we'd have, and they were all correct. Now, I'm not tooting my own horn because that's not rocket science, right? I mean, I think almost anybody who had us winning 6 games or more or less would pick most of the same wins and most of the same losses. So I'm no crystal ball reader or anything phenomenal at all. I just understood, I think, where this team was. I knew they would take a step forward. There were a lot of people, a lot of prominent Rutgers commentators who predicted less wins, 4 and 5 wins. Some people were saying the biggest test of the out-of-conference would be Virginia Tech. That may or may not be true. I think Northwestern has proven to be a good team. VTech has proven to be a decent team. I don't want to say Northwestern's a good team, but they're a decent team. A lot of people were poo-pooing that Northwestern win as if they were the bottom of the Power 5. That's not the case. I kind of had a decent handle on where this team was offensively, defensively, and I expected 6 wins this year. And I think it's important to understand that, we get to 6 wins, which was a blessing. I mean, it was great to get to 6 wins that early so that we could kind of relax the rest of the year and play with house money. Unfortunately, even though we were celebrating it and we were ready and free to play with house money, I'm enjoying the rest of the ride, even though we've had some disappointing Saturdays. Some people said, oh, I'm glad we're locked in. Now the season was a success. Now I could chill out and be happy with house money. And they're really not. They're jumping off cliffs in a lot of ways because we haven't won the past several weeks. But here's the thing. You got to understand. It's just by virtue of the schedule, right? What I mean is the schedule, we had one of those schedules that was front-loaded in September with our out-of-conference. Usually out-of-conference is front-loaded. But it wasn't even parsed out at all. You had Northwestern, though, which was awesome because you open up with a conference foe. Now, sadly, everybody thought Northwestern was FBS level, FCS level or something, it seems like. So they didn't get to fully enjoy that we dominated them so well. And you look in hindsight, and Northwestern isn't so bad. But you have the front-loaded out-of-conference schedule, and then you get one taste of a tough team in Michigan, and then you're right back into the games that we had a chance to win, right? So imagine if Michigan and Penn State were back-to-back earlier in the year, and we just got bowl eligible by just having that awesome win over Michigan State this past week. wouldn't the tenor of the fan base and the analysis be different at that point, right? Wouldn't we feel more on an upswing, like, wow, we're bowl eligible. Look at this team's resiliency. Look how they rebounded after a tough midseason schedule. They come back and win the games they're supposed to win. And, it would be culminating right at the time that Virginia Tech is doing okay and Northwestern's doing okay. And all of a sudden we beat, Michigan State and Indiana, and all of a sudden the tenor and the mood around the team would be different. It's just unfortunate, or fortunate, depending how you look at it, that our toughest games were stacked towards the back end of the schedule. And when I went and I predicted our schedule, I said it was fortunate we'd be bowl eligible, locked in, early, because I predicted a loss in every single game to finish out the schedule. But that's not because the team was regressing. That's not because we were going to get worse as the year went on. That's just the way the schedule shook out. This team is not as good, age, talent, whatever-wise. We have developmental players that aren't fully developed at the level yet that they can go toe-to-toe with Penn State. And I don't care what anybody says. Iowa has a terrible offense, but they're tough in the trenches. And we went crazy and put everything on the line and exerted ourselves as hard as we could against Ohio State a week before. So to think we were going to waltz in and beat them was also tough. Now, could we have beaten Wisconsin if it was different circumstances, if things shook out different? Yes. Could we have beaten Penn State? I mean, not Penn State. Could we have beaten Ohio State if that play, call, and throw didn't happen? And if, we had our defense together and we stopped a huge play by a star player later in the game when we were still in the game. And by the way, when Gavin Wimsatt and our running backs and offensive line had led us down the field to get a touchdown and keep us within grasp before that excellent play against Ohio State. Sorry for these sirens. It's ridiculous. Yeah, we could have, but we didn't. And we weren't expected to. And it was going to be tough to win those games regardless of what happened. So at the end of the day, there's a lot of negativity that doesn't need to be. Now, I predicted we'd lose to Maryland because Maryland has just had our number for the past several years. Tagovailoa is a solid quarterback. When he's on, they're on, and they're tough to beat. They can score points quickly. And we're going to have our hands full. But I'm hoping and I'm thinking we can beat Maryland at home to finish the year. And then I think once again, the attitude and mood around this team will be a little bit different. Now, in terms of this narrative that has gone on, there's a ton of good Rutgers content creators, and everybody should be checking them out. I've loved following Aaron Brightman this year. I follow TKR, and I follow the Rutgers Rant, which is they do a fabulous job. Steve Politi, Fonseca, Pat Lanny, they do a great job, and they've been very objective and a little bit of ebbs and flows. And after the game against Iowa, you saw a little bit of even Steve Politi saying, "Well, I don't know if Gavin's the guy." And like none of us know if Gavin's the guy, right? He's a sophomore. He's been below average this year, but wasn't necessarily expected to be well above average, I wouldn't say. This narrative that this is his third year, and let's just break down this narrative. And the reason I brought up Steve Politi and Pat and Fonseca was listening to them this week. I mean, they were very objective. The fact is, Gavin Wimsatt this week against Penn State, he only threw the ball 16 times, so it wasn't like he threw it a lot, but he completed 62% of his passes. The offensive line just could not stop Penn State. And I don't think it's because the offensive line stinks. I think Penn State is just very, very talented, very quick, very fast on the edge, and they had a good defense. And Gavin Wimsatt was getting pummeled a lot of times there. Losing the ball when he's just getting knocked around. He had the one interception. Unfortunately, didn't have a touchdown. Again, penalties killed us in the red zone. But he completed 62% of his passes. Everybody's saying accuracy can't be taught. He won't ever get above, 60%, this, that, the other. The adjusted that everybody's been making a big deal of, I don't know if I subscribe to it positively or negatively, but everybody wants to make a big thing out of the adjusted rate is still low. The adjusted rate was 70-something% this week from Wimsatt. So they put it in perspective. He had some bad games. He's had some decent games. And this was a better game against Penn State, all things considered. It wasn't his fault we lost. But this narrative wants to keep going where you're just blaming one person for everything wrong with the team. And now the narrative has I guess devolved into, well, even when he completes it, it's got to be a contorted acrobatic catch because he's so inaccurate. Oh, he's inaccurate. Oh, you got to keep it up. Let it die already. You don't have to stick to one narrative forever just because it appeases whatever the masses. I'm not in the business of appeasing anybody. I love you guys who argue with me, who debate with me in the chat. I love that you support the channel. I have nothing against somebody having a different opinion than me, and I have nothing against somebody letting me know they have a different opinion than me. That's what sports talk is all about. But this team, including a young and inexperienced quarterback, the narrative that it's, year 3 and we still haven't seen anything. Year 3. What was year 1? 2 passes? A bowl game and a nice 4th down completion against Illinois? That's not a year. This isn't year 3. He had year 1, which was nothing. Basically a redshirt year. Was a redshirt year. Then year 2, where he was swapping snaps with Evan Simon. Swapping drives with Evan Simon. Finally became the starter later in the year when the offensive coordinator was fired. This is his first year in the offensive system he's in. His first year as the unquestioned full-time starter. And he's a redshirt sophomore. I'm not saying the kid is going to bring us to the promised land. I'm not saying he's going to be the best quarterback ever. I'm just saying the idea that we've seen 3 years, we know what he is, and just throw him out now because we're never going to win with him is ridiculous. As is the idea that we were going to beat these teams but for the quarterback position. We are not there yet. It sucks, but we are not there yet. We will get there, I believe. The schedule softens up next year. All of these players, now we'll see who we lose. We may lose players to transfer. We may lose players to the draft. We're going to see where we are. But I still like the development and trajectory of this program. And I know there's a lot of conversation about where we could go. It's looking very likely that the Pinstripe Bowl is a possibility because I don't believe Wisconsin can go to a couple other bowls, so they may be a shoo-in for Vegas or for Nashville. I forget what it was, but wherever we go to a bowl, we should be happy we're in a bowl and try to win it and try to continue to carry this momentum with the last year's recruiting class was better than people I think realized. And this year's recruiting class, although it's not heavily loaded with these top Jersey kids, but the quarterback is from Jersey, and he's a heck of a prospect. You're getting talented kids from all over the country and becoming a national recruiting team and a national brand in a lot of ways. And before the season, I'll say I sound like a broken record, but everybody who was optimistic about the season said, let's get bowl eligible and let's look competitive in our losses and like we belong on the same field, and that will be a successful season. Well, I got news for you. That's exactly what the team has done so far. So it is a successful season. Could it have been better? Do we want it to have been better? Of course. Do we want Gavin Wimsatt to be a very good quarterback already, or at least above average? Of course. Are we disappointed that he's been below average this season? Of course. But that doesn't mean that the team, I've seen stuff about Schiano not being a good game day coach. I mean, this is really premature. He's not a good game day coach after when I was making fun of him because I was a clown in the car because it was pouring rain. I stayed till the end of the third quarter and was leaving. And I'm making fun of how he didn't take the good field position and made them re-kick, but then we scored on that re-kick and won that game. He's a bad game day coach. He doesn't know what he's doing. The guy who used to mismanage quarterbacks by pulling them and giving them a short leash is actually letting a kid grow. And he's not a good coach. I mean, what are we talking about in some of these circles in Rutgers world? This is a good season, and I'm excited about where we're going. Now, Maryland's a tough matchup, man. It could go either way. Maryland has had bad days and good days. They just lost to Michigan, put up a fight. They've had bad days and good days. And I think it depends, how on is their passing game when they play us. We have a formidable, good defense. A little banged up right now. But, I think we could hang with them for sure. We can beat them for sure. But it's a matter of, Are they on or not? They only go down 31-24 to Michigan. They are bowl eligible already. Similar to how it's always been with Maryland, we come in kind of with the same record, and similar prospects for what bowl we want to go to, and etc. Both 6-5, both 3-5 in conference, and their defense is not bad, but I think we can move the ball and score on their defense more so, especially than the last several opponents we've had. I think a big part of this game is going to be, can we contain the big play? Can we contain long sustained drives in the passing game and splash plays that help to sustain those drives? It's going to come down to our defense being able to hold that quarterback. And if this defense can hold that quarterback, we have a chance to win this game against Maryland. We have a chance. Kyle Monangai banged up. It's going to depend on that, and is somebody else ready to step up if Monangai is banged up? I know Reggie Sutton was banged up last game. I think Felter took an injury. So it's also going to depend how banged up this team is going into this game. Who's available? How deep are we? I think we've done a good job this season so far of plugging most holes. I do think the loss of Tyreen Powell was more significant than you realize every play, because you have guys who stepped in to raise a good player, stepped in, but there's an element of Powell's game, especially when you're talking about a guy who could run, laterally as a linebacker, that we lost when he went out. He was one of our better players for sure, and it's tough. Kyle Monangai's been a warrior all year, but he's banged up. He's banged up. Now, is Sam Brown going to step up? Can Aaron Young step up? Are they going to play Peoples again? Who steps up with a banged up team? Who steps up with a banged up team? We'll see. I don't know why I said Peoples, but whatever. I'm delirious. I had a crazy weekend, which is why I'm getting to you guys a little later. But Benjamin, these guys, he got finally a snap. He had negative yards last game. These guys have to step up, and we'll see if they can. I think the wide receiver core is taking some shots. It was good to see Jaquay Jackson back out there after the shot he took in the previous game. But Ian Strong continues to develop. He looks like a good player. He's developing too. I mean, these guys are the guys of the future, but how well do they step up as some of our frontline guys are dealing with bumps and bruises and more serious things as we go down the stretch here? It remains to be seen. But I'm encouraged by what we've seen this season, and I think we have a chance to beat Maryland. I didn't predict that we'd beat Maryland. I'm hoping that this is the first game I'm wrong on this year. And I think, when we go out and say, well, we can adjust expectations, I don't think it was fair to adjust expectations with the games that the optimistic fans thought we'd win anyway, and start to say, well, now we need to go even further above and beyond than any of us thought was possible. It just doesn't make sense. It's like, this is your ceiling. I don't think you can get there. Then they get to the ceiling, and you're saying, well, now the ceiling's much higher, and if you don't do it, you're a failure. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. The ceiling is the ceiling, right? Ceiling is the ceiling. You reach the ceiling, you reach the ceiling. I mean, it's your prediction that they weren't going to get beyond the ceiling. That's what the definition of ceiling is. You can just adjust it because they made the highest possible level that you thought possible, and now just say, oh, they got to do even better than that. It doesn't make sense. But I think this game, the Maryland game, is an actual legitimate, expectation adjustment. It doesn't mean if they lose, it's a failure, because it's still a success this season. But I think it's fair to say, based on how this team has played in their wins and in their losses, based how Maryland's season has gone, based on the fact that this is at home, I think Rutgers can win this game, and it's not unreasonable to predict a win. At the same time, this quarterback has absolutely shredded us the last couple years, and it hasn't even been close. So this defense has been good this year. Can they hold this Maryland offense to give our offense a chance? And it's not all in the defense. Can our offense get some momentum, sustain some drives, score some points so that our defense is in a better position to do that for us? All of these things remain to be seen, but you hope that you see them. And I think we can beat Maryland. Now on to basketball, and I know this started as a basketball channel, and then obviously I'm covering football as well. So I don't want to shortchange basketball in any way. But as the football season winds down, you'll see much more. You'll see more basketball centric stuff on this channel. I know they've been kind of in the second half of some of these episodes, but basketball is slowly finding that nucleus, that groove we talked about, right? And you look back at some of the wins and losses that we had, and I think it's interesting to see that Princeton has looked very, very good this season so far. And even in you talking about the Ivy League, Penn beats Villanova. So these Ivy League teams aren't a slouch, and Princeton looks good. So that Princeton loss maybe is not looking so bad anymore, especially because we were so disorganized and we didn't look like we were playing our best game or our best rotations in that game. So it's not even like Princeton just lined up and kicked our butt. They did, but we also didn't look good in that loss. Like, we knew who we were, and Princeton's looking good now. So that could bode well for us going forward, and I hope that it does. But you're seeing what I thought is Hyatt is an integral player on this team. He still struggles with consistency. Against Howard, he had 12 points, played for 26 minutes, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. I thought he had a solid game, but there's still opportunities in there that he could capitalize on. Derek Simpson, just recently we started to see now, and he had 23 points against Howard, 29 minutes, 4 assists, 2 rebounds. We've seen Derek Simpson start to do what I think most of us wanted to see him do this year, which is create by cutting to the basket, get fouled, make your foul shots. He's also been hitting some outside shots, which was, again, another development in his game that we wanted to see. And now we're seeing that. And that 23 points bodes well. Gavin Griffith's got some decent run in there. 25 minutes, but only 7 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. I thought he had a solid outing. I thought he looked good. Just the eye test. He was looking a little better on defense. He's not going to be a world beater yet. He's not going to be, elite this year, but better. I thought on offense he looked very good. He had one move behind the back, and he's cutting to the. He just is a very talented basketball player, specifically on the offensive side of the ball. And even though this week, that game, we only saw the 7 points. I think we saw him score 25 a few games earlier. So, if we can put together this Derek Simpson scoring ability, this Gavin Griffith's scoring ability, and his Hyatt scoring ability, but also have Hyatt be a little more consistent, have all these guys be a little more consistent, I think you're starting to see how this team could look. JaMychal Davis, 23 minutes, and he's still getting a lot of run, 3 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds. I like his game. I like his energy more than anything. I like his defense. Playing a little bit, but out of control on offense. But I think you're seeing that start to get a little more under control. How much run he gets when we get into the conference schedule and whatnot remains to be seen. But he's a developing player. I like that he's getting this much experience, at least in out of conference. Antoine Woolfolk continues, I think, to be a really nice piece to this team. 5 rebounds, 1 assist, 4 points. He has just a good presence on the floor, and I think it's interesting. I think it's going to be even more interesting to see how often we play him on at the same time as Cliff going forward. Cliff, 27 minutes, 15 points, 14 rebounds, 2 assists. Cliff has looked better. I'd like to see consistency from Cliff. I think in the last, this game I saw a little more consistency from him, throughout the game. Noah Fernandes, doing what we thought he was capable of doing when we got the transfer. Does Noah Fernandes' game transfer when we get into the conference schedule? I don't know. Does it transfer when we get, go up against Seton Hall and these other, Wake Forest and these other formidable teams? I don't know. But it looks like he's definitely a guard that can keep in control, that can hit a shot or two when the opportunity presents itself, and can play in control smart basketball, and then you have Williams, who's been out now for a couple games, and some people are saying, Williams being out helped the team. I don't know. I mean, but that is 2 games we've looked a little more in control. I don't know or necessarily think that it's just one player, that's the only reason why, we're not in complete, better control when he's in. I think it's just the guys figuring out how to play with each other, Pike figuring out the rotations, and these guys starting to hit their stride just a little more as we go into the season. I still think, this a lot's going to depend on we're going to live and die by these players that we don't have consistency from yet. Is Derek Simpson going to play in control and be able to score 15 to 20 points a game the way he just did? Is Andre Hyatt going to be consistent? He's been relatively consistent if you look at the body of work so far this season. But does he stay consistent? And can he start to capitalize on some of the missed opportunities he's had, especially around the rim? And then Cliff, can Cliff stay out of foul trouble? Can Cliff continue to be a defensive power down low and be able to throw the ball down when he's close to the rim? It looks like he can do that. I love his free throw shooting, certainly improved over the last 2 years, because that's a big thing. But I still think we're going to live and die. Our players are volatile in a way. And what I mean is our best scorers can have rough games sometimes. Gavin Griffiths, if he's hot, I mean, he's a really good athlete and a hell of an offensive weapon. But when he's not hot, now can be a liability, not because he's a bad player, because he's young on the defensive side of the ball, and he's not getting a ton of points on the offensive side. And the same thing with Hyatt. He's okay on defense, but if he's not scoring and he's not converting some of these shots, then, you go through cold streaks. And when you go through cold streaks, we've seen it all the time at the end of halves. We saw a little bit of a lull against Howard, and we see it almost every game. If those lulls kind of outnumber the hot streaks, it's a very streaky team, then, we might not be a tournament team. And if the streaks kind of start to become more consistent, less streaky in general, and start to become the norm, or we put together enough games against formidable opponents where those guys, Hyatt, Griffiths, Simpson, are being consistent in scoring, then we're closer to a tournament team. But I'm not ready. And earlier in the year, I said we were definitely a tournament team, but I'm not ready. I'm not ready right now to declare that we are or aren't until I see us go up against better competition. And I see us a little more settled into who we are against that competition. What is the rotation? Who's the first guy off the bench? What lineups do we use against what opponents? There's a lot of cool pieces here, and they've had bad days and they've had good days. And it's nice to see that in our out-of-conference schedule against opponents not named Princeton, we've generally been able to put together decent enough games to win without being too scared. And we've seen the attributes from every player that we thought they had. Like You've seen Cliff be the Cliff we wanted him to be for a stretch or a game. You've seen Gavin Griffiths, especially in one particular game, be the offensive power that we thought he could be, right? We've seen Hyatt a little more consistently be somebody who's going to score a good amount of points. We've seen Simpson now score 23 points against Howard and be that formidable, fast guard who can hit a couple outside shots but really creates by cutting in and driving to the hoop. We've seen every player that we'd like to see, except, Chol came in and hit a shot, but I still thought he was going to be a little more of a, if he's not getting in now against these out-of-conference teams, I don't think Chol's really going to play much, whatever. But you've seen from every player what you've wanted to see at some point or another so far this year. So that means the team has it in them. This team has it in them to reach the potential of being a tournament team. But we've yet to see these guys put these stats out there and these performances on the court consistently. So I'm waiting to see if we know every player that we'd like to have a certain skill set does possess it and can do it, but how often do they do it, and how often do they do it together at the same time in the same game? That's going to tell us a lot going forward about, who this team is and what their potential truly is. And by the way, getting Mawat Mag back is going to change things enormously. I think you have another full-time, like, steady starter on the team who is a very good defender, a good rebounder. I'm wondering if Wolf is maybe getting some of those minutes because those are Mag's minutes at the 4. And that changes the dynamic of the team and the chemistry and what guys are doing a lot too. So you're adding a upper tier defender, which has been a little bit of an Achilles heel some of these games, and somebody who's got very good energy and can create offensively, to an extent for him and also for the guys around him because he's a smart player. You get somebody like him back, and I think it also changes the dynamic. So based on the fact that we've seen some of the potential from these players and we have Mag coming back, you'd like to think we can reach that potential and have a decent year and be a tournament team, but it still remains to be seen. We got to see more consistency. And again, it's that hovering around of a nucleus. It's got to come together. We're seeing that, but it's got to continue. Now, they'd have a couple well-deserved days off. So the Thanksgiving break, the holiday, and then we come back and we have another game. And we have, obviously, several more games. But that kind of was the first chunk of the season with Rutgers basketball. Tough loss to Princeton. We didn't feel great about it, but now Princeton's looking pretty good. So maybe not as terrible a loss as we thought. And then just doing what we were supposed to do against the other out-of-conference teams. We have St. Peter's next. It's another game that we should win and get ourselves right, because right after that, we've got Illinois. So, that's right back to a conference foe, a conference rival, a little taste of it, and then you jump right into Wake Forest. You jump right into Seton Hall. Both of those are road games. So this December stretch now, because then you get a little bit of a reprieve again with LIU, but then you got the game at the Rock right around Christmas against Mississippi State. So, you got some tough games in December, and you've got a couple reprieves. But, it's time to see who this team really is as we get into the tougher opponents. And it's going to tell us a lot about this team as we get down there into December toward the new year. And then, obviously, the conference. This is not an easy season for Rutgers basketball. There's two reasons. One, we're transitioning. We're clearly transitioning. The final straw was kind of last year where we lost Caleb. We had lost Gio and Ron prior to that. And you got a lot of young players. You got Gavin Griffiths, his first year. And he's got to develop his defense a bit. And then you've got superstar players coming in next year. And so this is a tough year. The schedule's not necessarily easy. You opened against Princeton, which was tough at a neutral site. And, you're still finding your way and you're still trying to develop guys. But it's a tough year. So, I like some of the things I've seen. I'm scared or hesitant about some of the other things I've seen. But I do think that, we have the potential to have a good season. It just remains to be seen. All things considered, that's the long short of it, right? So, like I said, I think the football team has the potential to win against Maryland this Saturday. I hope to see all of you there. It should be a nice, crisp, very deep fall tailgate day. The Maryland tailgate has always been probably one of my favorites, if not my favorite, every year since we've been in the Big Ten. Just a lot of fun usually the last game. This year, we're not fighting for our bowl lives, so it's not, the end of the world, but it'll be really, really nice, and I think it would change the tone around the program and really elevate this season to another level of success if we could finish the season, with a winning record, beat Maryland, who has had our number the last couple of years, and head into the bowl game with some momentum. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys there. I'm looking forward to seeing whoever comes up and says hi. And I'm looking forward to Rutgers, having a gutsy performance. They've gone out there. They've laid everything on the line against these, just better programs over the last several weeks. And now's their chance to go up against a program that's a little more on their level, but who has had their number for a while, and say, look, we've arrived. We're not the same old Rutgers, and we're ready to play some ball. And we have a good game plan, and I'm looking for that, right? I'm looking for that at a Kirk Shiraka. We could blame the quarterback all we want, and he bears some of the blame. But I have not been impressed with Kirk's play calling over the last several weeks. I haven't. I wasn't impressed with it in Ohio State. I didn't like that call near the goal line. And there were some other calls I didn't like. Definitely didn't like a lot of the calls against Iowa. So I want to see a better game plan. I want to see, the team playing up to its potential more, especially on offense. I want to see guys step up if guys are banged up. And I think we can get the win. I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think it's guaranteed. I didn't predict it at the beginning of the season, but I am predicting now that we can do it. And I'd like to see us do it. So I predict we do win. I predict we do win. And I'm gonna say 21-17 because I'm gonna say our defense holds Maryland decently and our offense actually gets some things going and maybe our defense gives us some short fields or creates some points for us. It's a tough game to call in my opinion. It's a tough game to call, and even that might be spotting Rutgers too many points. But I got to be honest with you, if we don't score something, I don't think we're gonna beat Maryland or really anybody else. We got to start scoring. I think this is. It might feel a little bit lighter now after going up against such behemoths and such great programs the last few weeks that we're going up against one closer to our level, and maybe that gives the guys a little momentum and makes sledding a little easier. But we will see, guys. If you haven't done so yet and you've watched this channel and you followed me and you like my general presentation or you just like Rutgers content or Big Ten content, make sure you hit subscribe if you can. Please hit subscribe. We're trying to get to 500 subscribers. It would do a lot for this channel. I have some other things in the works, and I hope to bring them to you soon. And I hope to bring you, more content in the future and even from different mediums. But please hit subscribe if you've enjoyed this or you've been hanging around and watching some of my stuff here and there. Enjoy. Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. I hope everybody, gets to spend much needed time with loved ones, gets to have plenty of relaxation, and then we will see you Saturday. Go Knights.